Brian VANDUYN here, for those of you that don't know me. In this live stream, I just wanted to go over my ideal perfect dump truck. And so the first thing I want to do is give you the situation that I think this is the perfect dump truck for. Kind of go over that. And then if you guys want to add your comments or whatever and tell me your favorite type of dump truck or whatever, you can do that in the comment section or in the live chat if you guys catch this live stream. So my ideal perfect dump truck for me, obviously I'm going to be speaking as an owner-operator, right? So take that into consideration. As an owner, I personally want to look for something that is well-rounded, meaning I can do a couple different types of loads. I don't want to be boxed into just a specific type of load. And that's more my personality too, though, because like I consider myself a jack of all trades. You know, I don't really try and specialize in just one type of hauling. Me personally, I like to be a little diversified, and I like to be able to haul whatever I want. So let me just kind of go over some of the specs, some of the specifications of my perfect dump truck. So my perfect dump truck, I think my perfect dump truck is going to be this next truck that I just ordered, which is a simple 16. And that basically has 3 drop axles. It's got the 2 drive axles, and it's got the steer axle, right? So you got 6 axles, 16 tires. I would also have my perfect dump truck set up to haul a pup trailer. I think it's ideal to have a lift gate, which means a hydraulic lift gate, which means that the tailgate can lift up like this, not just open like this. Okay. I also think the perfect dump truck is going to have a metal box, a steel box, not a aluminum box. Aluminum boxes are pretty. I just think that, you know, they're really pretty, but at the same time, you limit yourself on what you can haul because, you know, you're obviously not going to haul big concrete in it. You're not going to haul almost any concrete in it unless it's recycled, you know, like stuff that's already been crushed up into 1.25 inch minus, or, you know, some sort of gravel type aggregate. You know, you're not even going to want to really haul like any type of unscreened pit run, because sometimes you get those boulders in there, you know. All it takes is one. If you have an aluminum box, I mean, it could put a dent in it, you know, or, you know, could break a hinge or something. Obviously, I don't have any experience with aluminum boxes, so I could just be talking out of thin air. But from what I can see in my 5 years of running a dump truck business, I would say that. I believe in Washington, I could be wrong, but I believe it's $72,000. I believe. I'm not 100% sure on that. Don't quote me on that yet. I haven't really looked up the numbers. But I've seen them hauling anywhere from 18 to 23 tons in a simple 16 without a trailer. So the reason I think a simple 16 is the ideal dump truck for me instead of a super dump, right? I really love the super dumps, I'm driving one right now. I own one. I really love the super dumps, but the strong arm, everybody that's owned a strong arm can agree with me. They have too many issues, right? I don't know about the Maxwells. I can't really speak for the Maxwells, but what I can tell you is I really enjoy spreading rock with the tailgate. That's one of my favorite things to do, because when you're spread rock and everybody sees it, they're like, oh, that's cool. Like, dang, that guy's, you feel good. With the super dump, because of the sheer weight that's in the bed, you can spread rock, you can back spread it, but back spreading is not as easy because of the sheer weight you have in the bed. I've noticed that when I'm back spreading, a lot of times what'll happen is, as soon as I pop the gate and I drive over that first little bump, it starts the truck rocking just a little bit. And if you're not careful with your throttle control, it just gets progressively worse by the time you get, 15 feet back there, and with all that weight in the air, it gets a little hairy. With the simple 16, you don't have 25, 26, 27 tons in there. You got 20 or, 19, 18, somewhere in there. So you still have a lot, but you don't have the full, one that a super dump has. So the one nice thing about a super dump is you can deliver a big payload, but it comes at the cost of 82,000 pounds on 3 axles. So when you hit a soft spot, you ain't going to know until you hit it. And then it's too late. So like with a simple 16, you have a little less weight in the bed, a little less weight on the tires. You're probably, I feel like you're less likely to get stuck instantly. Like, you have a couple more seconds to react. Not saying that you have a ton of time to react anyways, but I feel like it would be a little bit quicker. And I've gotten on job sites. I've got out and walked the job sites before, and you're stepping on the ground and it seems hard, and then you back up, and then next thing you know, you're stuck. Which luckily I've only got stuck in this thing like 4 times since I've owned it, so that's a pretty good track record. But still. So the reason I think I like a simple 16 better than a super dump for my perfect truck. One of the downsides of the super dump, this truck, is the box is so tall to fit all that weight in. So you're limited on the size of machine that can load your truck. That's one of the downsides that I've noticed since I've gotten this truck a couple times. Like, somebody wanted to load me with a 35, and I'm like, dude, that ain't gonna happen. Unless you got a pile to sit on, you're not loading it. You just can't reach up high enough. So that's where I think the simple 16 will shine better than the super dump. And I don't do a lot of work where I need that, but it will, with the way I run my business, it'll be better for me, because I have a size 50 excavator, which I can load this with my size 50, even with the muck bucket on. I can still reach up and fill it, but it's tough. It's tough. It's so much easier when you have a pile to sit on to load. With the simple 16, the sideboards are easily going to be a half a foot lower, maybe a foot lower, and it tapers down in the back. I think the perfect dump truck has a taper. I don't like the ones that are square on the top. Personally, I prefer a dump truck that has the box that's tapered. Also, I also prefer the box that is longer on the bottom than it is on the top. So like the tailgate isn't straight up and down. I like it. It's called the asphalt taper, right? I like the asphalt taper. Gives you more versatility because like if you want to go do paving one day or 2 days or whatever, if the end of your box is straight up and down, when you tip that box up, there's not enough room for you to overhang into the paver, right? So I like my dump trucks to have that asphalt taper. I do not like asphalt aprons. I think they're a cool idea, but I don't think they're worth it. Like if your box is straight up and down, then yeah, you pretty much have to have an asphalt apron if you ever want to do paving. But I don't like asphalt aprons because you lose a lot of productivity time. The guys that have asphalt aprons, they have to get out every single load they dump and sweep that thing off. Every single time. I've never seen one that they never got out and swept it. You gotta sweep those things every time you dump because there's always something stuck on that thing. Always. So I don't like those, right? My perfect dump truck is gonna have Hendrickson Hall Max pads. I don't like air suspension. I've never had air suspension on a dump truck, but I've heard the nightmare stories, right? A lot of conversion trucks have airbags and they have trouble dumping a lot of times because on a lot of job sites, they're not perfectly level. And the contractors, they don't care if it's not level. Even if it's like this much, like, hey man, can you dump right here? It's like, dude, it's not level. It's like, I don't care, dump it anyways. And so if you have airbags, they're not as flexible. Like the air pressure stays the same in every bag, right? So you end up leaning more. When you have springs, it allows the axles to flex a little bit more, from my understanding. From what I've seen and what I've experienced, you want an actual spring suspension or a pad, like a rubber pad suspension on a dump truck. On my perfect dump truck, I've experienced a 13-speed, an 18-speed, and an automatic. And as an owner, if I'm the only one driving the thing, I'm okay with an 18-speed or a 13-speed. But if I get to choose, I'm choosing an automatic because it's so much easier to do my job. There's less things to think about. So I hands down would go with an automatic every time. You just drop your airbags when it's not level. See, and that's a work by. That's a work through right there. I don't know if it makes it the same as a spring suspension when you drop your air, because like I said, I've never driven one with air and compared it to my experience in the spring ones, but I've heard the stories and I just always stuck with the stiff suspension, you know. And I've had people tell me, I don't know if this is true, but I've had people tell me that if you have airbags, you're more likely to get stuck. Like if you're trying to get out of somewhere that's bumpy, you're more likely to get stuck in airbags because the tires tend to bounce a little bit more. They tend to hop a little bit more. Whereas springs, they hold it still a little bit more. I don't know if that's true, but that's what I've heard. And it kind of makes sense to me, you know, because springs are stiffer than airbags, obviously. So, you know, it would keep more pressure down, but I don't know. That could just be somebody saying, you know, something, but it kind of makes sense to me. So I would go with my experience and just say that I would always prefer something that is solid. Let's see. In Washington, you need at least 450 horsepower or more, right? Now, if you want to be, Mr. Super Trucker driving down the road, rolling coal or whatever, you can get the 550, the 525, the 600, the Cummins, blah, blah, blah. If, if you're not trying to compensate, the PACCAR MX-13 is going to do everything you want to do. I mean, that at the end of the day, the 505 horsepower that the PACCAR brings is plenty to do the work in Washington. And we got lots of hills in Washington. Like, it's all mountains. Like, it's all like this. And I know some of you guys in the eastern side think that you got mountains, but you got little lumps, and that's it, So you guys can get away with having less than 450 horsepower. But in Washington, if you're going to haul a dump truck, if you're hauling above 56,000 pounds, I would say you need more than 450 horsepower. So my perfect truck is going to have at least 500 horsepower, 505, 495. What's up, Joey? Been a while since I've been on YouTube. I also, okay, so I personally like I think they were 395 front tires. They were wide, but not super wide, not the 4 1/4 floats. I like the 4 1/4 floats because you can haul the weight, but I like the 395s because they don't slide around as much when you're in mud. Right? So, but I mean, you got to go with whatever the law is, right? So, if you got to have 4 1/4 floats, you got to have 4 1/4 floats. That's just, it is what it is. I don't make the rules, I just report them. So, another thing I think is very nice to have on a dump truck is a vibrator, a bed vibrator. I've had 3 dump trucks. 2 of them didn't have vibrators, and this one has a vibrator on it, a bed vibrator. And the bed vibrator does wonders. Like, it really is worth having it on there. The extra $500 or $1,000, it really does make a difference, I think. And you don't have to use it every time. You just use it whenever you feel like there's still some stuff in there, and it does pretty good. And I've had experiences where, the gravel was a little bit damp when they put it in, and I'm supposed to spread it, right? And if your chains are right where you need them when it's dry, but if it's wet, then it clogs up in there. If you hit the vibrator, sometimes it's just enough to keep spreading, without it clogging up back there. So I really like that feature. I've heard a lot of good things about those liners that people put in their beds. There's no company in Washington that makes liners that I know of, or I would probably buy one. And I don't have a lot of experience with buying dump bed liners and stuff in Washington, and I don't know anybody who does that, so I've never been able to use one or try one out, see what the difference is. But I can imagine those plastic liners work wonders when you're hauling certain type of products. Just wondering why that guy's on the side of the road. So I think my perfect dump truck is exactly what I just bought. It's a T880, 505 horsepower, Hendrickson Hallmax suspension, steel bed, 1/4 inch thick bottom, 1/4 inch thick tailgate. You got to have a thick tailgate. You got to have a thick bottom. The sides don't have to be as thick, right? But the bottom has got to be solid. The bottom's got to be solid, and it's got to be thick, because here's what happens. You're always going to get that rookie loader. You know, it's his first day on the job, it's his second day on the job, and he's being trained, and he takes that scoop and just dumps it right in the bed from 15 feet up in the air, the whole load at once. And then next thing you know, 5 years down the road, your bed looks like this, you know? And so, honestly, you got to have a thick bed, in my opinion. I think that's one of the things that you don't cheap out on, because you want it to last and you don't want headaches down the road. And if you have a bed that's all warped out, the dirt's going to stick in it every time. Like, I've seen it. I've seen dump trucks that have the beds that are all, you know, waved out, and they have to get in there every single time with the shovel and scoop that stuff out, you know, at the end of the day. So I would try and stay away from that. You know, the tailgate construction is very important on a dump truck. And here's what I would recommend. If you're trying to buy a dump truck, look at the tailgate and just think in your head, how is this thing going to fail? Like, if I'm spreading rock, how is it going to fail? If I am, you know, if I forget, if I have a driver and he forgets to take the chains off or forgets to release the gate, how is this thing going to break? And if you can think of it instantly, how it's going to break, then it's probably a crappy tailgate. It's literally that simple. Just imagine all the weight sliding against it. How's it going to break? You know, I've seen, you know, I've had 3 dump trucks, and on 2 of the dump trucks, the tailgates have been a weak spot. Both times, they were both with super dumps. The tailgates were garbage. And, you know, and it was basically common sense, like, to me, why they failed. Like, I just looked at them like, yeah, that's a piece of garbage. That ain't going to hold up. Like, you already know just by looking at it. You know, are the lights recessed into the pillars? And do the pillars have any extra support? It's literally that simple. Like, if they only have 2 pillars, one on each side, and the lights are taking up half of the pillars, it's going to bow out on you. Guaranteed. If you ever spread rock, or if you ever forget to release the tailgate, if you ever forget you have your chains on, or if you release the tailgate and the latches don't release. If they get stuck because there's a rock in there or something and it doesn't release, and the whole load shifts against the tailgate, which that happens no matter what. If you tip the box up, the load's shifting, it'll bow it out and break it, and then it's useless, and then you have a big headache on your hands. So, if you're buying a dump truck, the tailgate is one of the most important things you have to look at. Number one, because it's got to seal the material inside. Because if it's not, then you're dumping stuff along the road and you're getting all, you know, you're going to get calls for broken windshields. You're going to get pulled over by the DOT. You're going to get tickets. You're going to get this and that. And trust me, the tailgate is one of the most important parts of your dump truck. So on mine, personally, on my dump trucks, on every single one of them that I've owned, I've always added a piece of plywood, marine plywood, to the tailgate. The thickest plywood I can buy is what I always add. And it's like 1.5 inches. 1.5 inches, 1.25 inches, marine grade plywood. I bolt it right up to it. And that does a couple things. with the way I do it is I shove that piece of plywood up there and I draw a circle. I get on the inside of the dump truck and I draw a line, and that's how I cut it with the skill saw. So it fits the tub perfectly. What that does is it creates an extra added 1.5 inches of sealant where product has to pass that 1.5 inches and then drop out. So it's like 0% chance anything leaks. Once you have that on there, you're never going to have anything fall out. Even if it's sand, right? It still won't fall out. The water don't even come out. It seals it so good. My perfect dump truck has that. I think you got to have some sort of beacon, some sort of amber flasher on the top of your dump truck. I think that's really nice to have, especially because four-way flashers aren't good enough to get people's attention nowadays. Like, you're trying to, stop traffic so you can back into a job site or something. That extra flashing light in people's faces says, hold up, let me do what I'm doing, before you start crowding me. It's just an extra, thing saying, pay attention to what I'm doing here, unless you want to crash into me. My new truck should be arriving at they told me the build date was March 2nd, the start date. So they started building my truck today. And I was told by the salesman, which they're salesmen, right? So you can't always trust everything they say. But I was told by him that the box should be done before the truck's ready for it. So we'll see about that. We'll see about that. Like, the one thing, if you ever order a truck, never have an expectation of when that thing's going to be done. Because I guarantee you it won't be done when you want it. It ain't happening. It never happens that way. Unless you're buying 500 trucks from a dealership a year. If you're a one-man show like me and you're buying one truck every 2 years, every 3 years, your truck ain't going to be done when they say it is. That's just the way it is, man. It's not. You're not as important as you think you are. You're not as special as you think you are. You think you're buying a $300,000, $500,000 truck. You think you're special. You're not special. Here's the thing. I always recommend, if you're starting your business, to buy your dump truck 100% cash the first time. I don't think you should be financing anything when you first start your business. Number one, because you don't have any experience, and you may hate what you think you're going to love. You may hate it. And if you finance something, you're going to lose your tail so bad, you may never recover from it. I mean, it's not going to be pretty. Let me just put it that way. So I feel like if you're just starting your business, I mean, it may be a little different if you've been in that industry for 15 years. If you've been driving somebody else's dump truck for 15 years, then maybe you can finance one, right? And be successful. But I wouldn't go that route. I personally love the fact that I bought an old dump truck, and I started with an old dump truck, and it was paid for with cash. And another reason why I never recommend people finance their first truck is because you may think you got work, buddy, but you won't have any work. Like I got lucky when I started my business. And as soon as I started, like I had work for the first 6 months. I didn't take a single day off. I worked day and night. Like I was hustling. 106,000 in revenue in my first 6 months. I didn't have zero experience driving dump trucks. And I made 106,000 in 6 months. Like I killed it. But then the next 5 months, I didn't work 3 days. So I can only imagine what it would have been like if I had bought a $300,000 truck, had $4,000 a month payments, and not had any work for 5 months. Yeah, I would have been selling the truck. Guaranteed. There's no way I would have made it. No way. Even with 106,000 in revenue. Like, if you think about it, that was gross revenue, by the way. So once you take out fuel and insurance and maintenance and all that other jazz, if you got a brand new truck and you all of a sudden have to take 5 months off of work because you don't know anybody and you thought your main customer was going to keep you busy and then they don't, then you got to come up with, let's see, 5 months, 4, 8, 8 and 8, 16. You got to come up with $24,000 worth of truck payments or somehow have that saved. Or, you know, if you do the whole debt and credit route, then you got to have a banker that's willing to give you $50,000 so you can float through the winter and then try and work your tail off all summer so you can pay that back. Like, yeah, not me. I don't want to do that. That's why I always say buy your first truck with cash. You know, once you know what your business can do and what you can do as a business owner, then you can go finance something. But if you start your business out with debt, I think you're an idiot. I don't know how to say it. Like, I just don't think it's smart. You're too naive if you think that you're going to make it. Like, they say like 90% of business owners fail by the first 5 years. So if you go into debt $400,000 and then, you know, then you have a $20,000 repair bill on a brand new truck, you know, and you were barely breaking even, and then you're like, man, screw this, I ain't making any money, and you go try to sell everything, then you're in the hole $50,000, and then you got to go work for somebody and make $50,000 a year. You wonder how long it's going to take you to financially recover from that. Like, nope, not me. I'm not going to go that route. I'd rather take a gamble on $8,000, you know, work a clapped out truck for 2 years and see what I personally can do in business and what my realistic numbers are, and then formulate a plan based off of those numbers instead of fairy tale dust. That's what I would do. And that's what I did. I took a gamble. I'll never forget it. When I looked at that truck, I'm like, babe, I think we're going to buy it. She's like, are you sure? That you want to spend we worked very hard to save up that $8,000. That took us a year. I had $10,000 saved up. She's like, you sure you want to spend our life savings on that? And I'm like, I want to. Yeah, let's do it. And then your father-in-law looks at you like, you bought that? What? You bought that? You know, and then everybody on the internet's like, well, what are you going to do when the state outlaws that pig and you can't drive it down the road because of the emissions? You know? Here's the thing, though. I will tell you this, though. If somehow you are able to get financing for a $400,000 truck, having zero business experience and zero business credit, if you can do that and you make it and you actually stick with it, you will make a lot of money in equity on the truck. You can make a killing, because your loan's only going to be 5 years. Once you've worked for 5 years, if you can make nothing on 5 years, because you're not going to make much if you have a big payment, but in 5 years you own that truck, that's a lot of money in your pocket in equity. It can pay off big time, but at the same time, I would not risk it. I'm a safer guy than that. I'm not going to go into debt like that. I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. But I know my numbers, so I know what I can do. I know if I really want to, really sock it to them and work as hard as I can, I know what my numbers will look like. So I'm okay with me signing up for something. I know what the realities of everything is, because I have actual history that I can look at and pour through the numbers and actually do real math on what it's going to look like. When I first started, I had no clue. I was, prepare for the worst and hope for the best. That's how I started my business. I was thinking, the first 6 months I may work 3 or 4 days. That's what I was hoping. I'm like, man, if I work 3 days this summer, I'm gonna be lucky. And I wanted to have 6 months saved up. I wanted to have $15,000 in the bank for when I started, and then I ended up getting fired. That was a kick in the pants. You never expect that. I'm gonna do the right thing. I'm gonna tell my boss I'm gonna quit in a couple months and start my own business. I'm gonna do the right thing. That's the honorable, moral thing to do. A week later, you're fired. Well, I guess I'm starting my business with what I got in the bank, or I'm gonna die trying. So I think the perfect dump truck is a solo dump truck. The biggest solo dump truck you can get without having all the extra frills, and get a trailer in Washington. I would say in Washington, and get a trailer. You can make it work with the solo dump truck. Without a trailer, without a super dump, with the solo dump truck, 3 axles, 4 axles, 5 axles, 6 axle, 7 axle. You can make it work with just that if you get in the right group of people and you meet the right people and you just keep your mouth shut and keep your head down. Take the hits when they come and celebrate when it's time to party. You can really, you can make a good living, If you really want to go get it, get a trailer, get a super dump, and then, you can scale your business. Scaling a business is risky and tough. And there's 2 ways to scale a business, right? And everybody knows Justin's way. You just go into debt up to your eyeballs, and then you hire a whole bunch of people and hope and pray they don't break your stuff. Or you can do it nice and easy and slow. With your own money. That's tough. That is tough. Because you basically don't spend any money, and you just save everything you make. And then when you have enough to buy something else, then you buy something else. But the nice thing is as you're scaling your business, if you own what you have, it goes, once you start making money, it's your money. It ain't nobody else's money. You know, it's like you progressively, it's almost like getting a raise every single year. But if you go into debt and you buy all that stuff, you don't get your raise up front. You get it at the end. At least that's kind of the way I kind of see it. Like if you scale your business on your own money, you get a raise every single year and it's yours to keep. But if you go into debt and you buy 5, 6 trucks all at once for 6 years, 7 years, you're working for free. And then at the end of those 7 years, if you still got some good equipment, that's when you get your raise. You know? At least that's kind of the way I see it. I mean, both ways are really, they're really hard both ways, to be honest with you. And either way, it's still hard. Running a business is not easy. Like anybody that thinks running a business, even if you go into debt and you just do it all with debt, it still ain't easy. You know, running a business is not, it's not a 9-to-5 gig. You know, a lot of people think you can just do it 9 to 5 and it never turns out being 9 to 5, you know. You can kind of make it a 9 to 5, but then you end up not making any money. Like the whole reason to be in business is to make some serious money. Oh yeah, so this seat I bought, this is a Pinnacle. It's called a Pinnacle. It was like $1,500. Plus like a $200 adapter. If you're an owner operator, here's one thing I can tell you. At the end of the day, if you're sore, it's your seat. Whatever it costs to replace the seat and get one of these, do it. You will allow yourself to work so many more hours. It will pay itself off instantly. Because you'll be more comfortable, you'll be willing to work more hours if you're not sore. That's how I justify buying this. Like, my drivers were complaining, you know, oh, the seat's hard, and I drove it. I'm like, dude, that seat's freaking money, dude. What are you guys talking about? You know, but that's because I was driving a 1985 with a seat that was clapped out 10 years before I bought it, and it had no cushion, and it was just basically a metal plate I was sitting on. You know, I was used to driving that. So I'm like, dude, that's like sitting on a cloud. I don't know what you guys are complaining about, you know. But after I started driving it for, you know, a couple months, and I'm like, you know what? It is a little stiff. What the heck? If I work an extra hour a day because I'm more comfortable, in that extra hour, the seat will pay for itself in 5 months, you know. So that's how I justified it. If it makes me work longer, yeah, dude, it's a game changer, dude. This seat is a game changer. You know, the other seat wasn't bad, but this seat is like nice, like heaven. Except for once it gets hot. You know, like if I got like the windows up and it starts to warm up, you know, then it's kind of a pain because it's leather and it takes forever to kind of cool off. You know, but if I have the temperature right all day long, then it doesn't warm up, you know. I wish it had a cooling feature. That would be nice. Cooling and heating, they got to do that sooner or later. in these trucks. So my perfect dump truck's got to have one of these seats in it. Pinnacle seats. I'm not sponsored by Pinnacle. They didn't buy this seat. They didn't give it to me for free. I had to pay all the money in the world for it. That's my honest opinion. It's a good seat for a dump truck. So another thing, I think a good dump truck has got to have lockers. It's got to have an inner axle lock and a rear locker. That's really nice. I think that's a big plus. I think that's really nice having that. Also, what? I didn't know they made those. I'm gonna have to look into that, especially in the summertime. I don't think dump trucks should have those low bumpers. I think that's stupid. I'll be honest. That's an over-the-road truck type of thing, man. For me, I like my nice bumper that's up high. Gives me the ground clearance. You know, if you want that bumper that's touching the dirt, that's plowing the dirt as you go, then that's up to you. But the hydraulic bumpers that tip up, that won't work in Washington. Not in the pits we have. That will not work. They don't tip up high enough. And I can only imagine trying to get pulled out with a bumper that flips up like that. For some reason, in my head, I don't know how that would work. They'd try to pull you out and it would probably rip the bumper off. But yeah, I think you know, like a 17-foot long bed, steel, taper. You want rubber or spring suspension, 3 drop axles, set up for a pup trailer, high lift gate, steel bed, reinforced floor, reinforced tailgate. Yeah, I would say those are the important things for me as an owner-operator, because I like to be able to haul anything, really. You know, if I want to haul concrete one day or asphalt the next, you know, that's kind of the way I want to be set up. So I would say those are the top things to look for when you're buying a dump truck. In Washington, I don't like the dump trucks that have the box that are square on the top, because you got to have at least a size 50 or bigger to load them. And a lot of people, you know, don't have those big excavators, you know, and it's just really convenient if they can just load you with a 30 that's on site, you know. So I would say, you know, if you can manage to get one with smaller sideboards, that would be great. I wouldn't get a dump truck with 4 drop axles, though. To me, that just seems like too many drop axles. I know in different states, you guys have different bridge laws where you can have 4 drop axles. I personally don't think I would want a truck with 4 drop axles, just because they're so long, and guaranteed those tires are going to be scrubbing when you turn. You know, you're going to run through tires. It can't turn as good on job sites. Also, another thing I would recommend, your dump truck has got to have a tow point on the front and on the back. So if you get stuck, somebody can pull you out, because it's not if, it's when. You will get stuck in a dump truck, you know, unless you only do paving. Unless you only do transfers from one, you know, even if you do transfers from one pit to another pit, if you're dumping in there, you know, where they're dumping, I guarantee that. So that's what I would say. I would go with an automatic transmission just to be more hands-free, you know. Yeah, I don't think they even make straight drop axles anymore, do they? All the trucks I've ever seen in Washington all had steerable drop axles. So I don't even know if they make straight drop axles anymore. If they do, they don't have them in Washington. I can tell you that. I've never seen one. I don't think I've ever seen anybody ever lift their drop axles going around a corner unless it was wet out. You know, I would say another thing that is really nice to have is a drop axle that's set up as soon as you put it in reverse, it goes up. So you don't have to try and remember to flip the switch. You know, that, I think that makes a difference. You know, with my old truck, it would happen like maybe twice a year, twice a summer, where I'd be backing up and I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Oh, I lift the drop axle, you know. Wouldn't happen that often, but it, you know, it's one of those things that does happen every once in a while, you know. You get doing your thing and you forget. Got to make sure that strong arm gets put away nicely before I go under these power lines. That's the one nice thing about a Maxell versus a strong arm is they don't have to watch is going to hit any power lines because it never goes higher than its stowed position. Strong arm, it flips up and adds like an extra 1.5 to 2 feet when you're putting it away. It will grab power lines if you're not paying attention, or overpasses or whatever. But the other nice thing about the strong arm versus the Maxell is I can put that thing up going 50 miles an hour down the road. The Maxell, they got to slow down to, you know, 5 miles an hour to engage their PTO. My PTO is always engaged. Not saying that I would put it up at 50. I'm just saying if I'm going 20 miles an hour down the road, I don't have to slow down to put it up. It just goes up on its own. We got a police officer back here. I'm about to screw him up. Okay. Well, whoever parked there has an oil leak. That's pretty apparent. Also, I would say personally, I would not run a dump truck with recaps. A lot of guys run recaps. I won't run recaps. I always run virgin tires, and I always have mud tires. That's something else I would always do with my dump truck. I like having spreader chains. But all right, guys. Tarp. Yeah, I would put a tarp on it too. Have a tarp. I like the mud flaps that fold up when I put it in reverse. I got that on this truck, automatic mud flaps. That's nice. I haven't ripped off a mud flap ever since I trimmed them up to halfway up the axle, which is legal. At least in Washington. I like the hot shift PTOs where you can be rolling and engage the PTO. But I'm not opposed to having a PTO where you have to stop and push in the clutch to engage it. That's not the end of the world for me. Something that's important with the dump truck is good backup lights. Like, seriously. Most of your driving is backwards in a dump truck, so you better have good backup lights. Like, the first hour and a half in the morning, it's always dark, and the first hour and a half at the end of your shift, it's dark. Like, you got to have good backup lights. That's one of the things that I think a lot of dump trucks fall short on backup lighting, because the stock backup lights suck balls. Like, lighting on for a dump truck. Like, you have to back up every time you dump your load. They need floodlights on every dump truck. Like, that's mandatory. Backup beeper, that's questionable. I think they should all have switches. Turn it on and turn it off. It's nice to have a backup beeper during the day. In the mornings, at 6 in the morning, if you're in a residential area, you ain't trying to wake up the whole neighborhood with your loud backup beeper, shut that thing off. Everybody's paying attention on the job site. When you're backing up, when those lights kick on, they ain't going to stand there like idiots. When they see those floodlights come on, they know you're backing up. And if you got the right backup lights, they'll know it. Trust me, they'll know it. If they're not complaining that your lights are too bright, then your lights ain't bright enough. That's the way I feel about backup lights. A good CB, a good microphone. You always want to be able to be heard in the job site. Get a hard hat. You got to have some sort of air gun to blow your dump truck out, because the amount of dirt that builds up in these dump trucks, ridiculous. You got to have some sort of broom to sweep it out at the end of every day. This guy's smoking weed while he's walking down the road. All right. Well, I think that about concludes it. I think I've told you pretty much every point about the dump trucks, why I think they're good, why I would choose one. If you have any other questions or comments, put them in the comments section and tell me what you think. And tell me what you agree on, tell me what you disagree on. Or if you're in a different area and the perfect dump truck looks different to you, you can tell me all about that. Might not, we won't. I don't really read the comments anymore. I just got too sick of looking at stupid comments, I guess. So, anyways, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks for tuning in.